So we're going to be looking at new technologies now in the cities. So in this particular case, new technology is the bicycle. And bicycles are interesting because bicycles are a form of freedom for women as well. In a time when there was a male-dominated society, mainly whites, women through bicycles were able to express their freedom because now they don't have to be followed around by their chaperone. They're able to go out and express their social, economic freedom on their own. And because the bicycle, to a certain extent, women started to fight for these rights that they wanted, fights rights like the right to vote, the right to be able to have government jobs. So we're going to look at this new technology, but in the form of entertainment. And again, bicycles was one of the major ones. In like 1874, there were only about 50,000 bicycles in the United States. And then in the next 2 years, by like 1890, there was 340 companies that were producing about 10 million bicycles a year. So again, that also helps for jobs, and that also helps with people getting away from the city and being able to join a bicycle ride in the park. And again, we're going to be looking at parks a little bit later. But the bicycle becomes a new technology and a new form of social and gender equality as well. So one of these new ideas also is the game of basketball. In the late 1800s, YMCA, they wanted to introduce a winter sport because winter was coming and a lot of youth were kind of like just staying at home, but they wanted the young people to be active constantly. So basketball comes around, and literally it was a basket that you had to throw a ball, and then of course you had to retrieve it using a ladder. Basketball was just introduced for men only. It was later, women were later able to join basketball along with volleyball. But now that men and women are equal in basketball, men wanted to show that they were still superior than women. So they came up with more physical contact sports like martial arts and boxing. But now we have a new technology that again goes on in the late 1800s. Another new technology, well, this was kind of new. This actually was after the Civil War. It was baseball. It came from an English sport called rounders, very identical. So first, there was not really any teams or anything. People just kind of gathered just to socially play. Eventually, when people saw that this could become a business, it went from just a social sport to a business sport. And so now we have 12 different teams that are being produced with the purpose of making money, generating money. Notice most of these teams are in the north. So initially people just kind of played for fun, but then stadiums started to be built and people started to charge viewers to be able to come and see it, fans, right? These initial 12 teams were predominantly just from white males. African Americans were denied, or if they wanted to play there, they had to change their complexity to a certain extent, and they had to change the way they looked so that the fans did not realize that that was an African American. So we also see again racial inequalities in sports, gender inequality in sports, right? So because of this, because African Americans were denied the right to be able to play sports with whites, they come up with their own league, what becomes known as the Negro League. So these 12, 13 individuals, they formed the Negro League where African Americans are able to play. But it's not until 1947 when Branch Rickey brings up Jackie Robinson, an African American, to be able to play for the Brooklyn Dodgers, where we see baseball that is integrated. Now, it wasn't limited to baseball. Every other professional sport was segregated. And so to a certain extent, baseball gets credit for being the first sport to introduce African Americans to play in their league. We also see football. You notice here, this picture is from Chilico Indian School in 1911. So this is actually a Native American school, and Native Americans were also being introduced into these American sports so that they could be assimilated. Now, one of the major football players of all times is Jim Thorpe, who was a Native American from Oklahoma, which is where this school is at. So these individuals had, to a certain extent, someone to look up to. But again, sports were also changing their culture, and it was impacting the way they view themselves. So sports, while it did create a recreational opportunity for many people, to a certain extent, it continued to be a social, ethnic, and gender inequality, which were all aspects of American society in the early 1900s.